May I speak to you in the name of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Oftentimes when we're reading through the gospel, when we hear these stories, it's easy for us to put ourselves in the place of the apostles. Not because they're super Christians, and so are we, but because they're so real. Because they stumble and mess up, and they get it wrong, and they struggle with what it means to follow Jesus, just like I'm sure we all do. The danger with that is when we come up to stories like this, we so readily relate to the apostles that we might miss that in this story, we're not relating with the apostles probably. We're probably more in line with the man who comes forward to Jesus. Part of the reason we have, that we might not want to admit that, is because we have a couple thousand years of history at our beck and call, and we know who Jesus was. But think about this man compared up against the apostles. Jesus showed up on the shore and called Simon and Andrew out of their boat and said, hey, leave everything you have. Leave your livelihood, your families, your home. Leave all that and come follow me. We might look back on that now and say, well, yes, Jesus, of course you go. But they didn't know that at the time, right? He was some probably charismatic teacher that they may have heard a little bit about. But it's not until halfway through the Gospels that Simon tells Jesus that he knows he's the Messiah. It's not until later on that they really figure out who Jesus is. So they're leaving everything behind for some guy who they just met probably, who they may have heard a little bit about. It makes the rich man's response a little bit clearer, doesn't it? He has a better idea of who Jesus is probably. Jesus has been going around for a while now, but still he hesitates at that leave everything behind and follow me. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, most of us would line up with him than with Simon or Andrew or James and John, who all got up from their livelihood, left their boats and their nets, and walked away. This man comes to Jesus and says, Teacher, what do I need to do to get this right? What do I need to do to inherit eternal life? What do I need to do to draw closer to God? And Jesus starts listing off the commandments. And of course they're the ones that who here has never murdered anyone, right? Of course he's like, yeah, I got this. I'm good. I got this. Jesus looks at him and he loves him. Well, there's one thing. You lack one thing. Go sell everything you own, give it to the poor, and then come and follow me. Essentially what all those other guys did. Leave everything behind. Give it away and come follow me. And we hear that he walks away grieving because he had a lot of stuff. First of all, his a lot of stuff probably doesn't even touch what we have on our own, right? We've got a lot more than they had then. But we all probably find ourselves in his shoes more often than the disciples. Sure, we come here on Sunday mornings and throughout the week, and we do good things and all that. But how many of us would be willing to get rid of everything we have to go and serve the gospel? I don't think that's necessarily where we're being called right now. The gospel has been spread throughout the world. Sure, there's still needs elsewhere, but there's a lot of needs here too. So I think we don't have that call. But we do get other calls from Jesus to follow him more deeply, to give up of ourselves a little bit more fully and work a little bit more for his kingdom. Don't all rush out after this service and go talk to Heidi about selling your houses and doing all that. But think about those times when you hear Jesus' voice calling you to something deeper, calling you to something fuller. How often have you encountered that and then heard another voice start saying, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but what are you going to do about this? Or what will people say? Or how will that affect work? Or how will that affect your family or friends? I think that's why we line up more with this man than with the apostles in this story. I don't like to speak for everyone, but I feel pretty confident that we all get that voice at some point, to some degree, to some volume. We obviously don't listen to it completely because, yeah, we gather here. This is an amazing parish filled with some amazing people who do really good things. But I'm sure we've all come up at that point where we've heard Jesus calling us more and been pulled in a different direction. Maybe like him because we're comfortable with what we have and we don't want to mess that up. Or maybe we're afraid that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not whatever enough. But I feel confident in saying that we all have that voice to some degree, whispering when Jesus calls us, saying, yeah, but what about this? But maybe not now. Maybe you're not good enough. Jesus addresses this with his apostles. How hard it is for the wealthy to enter the kingdom. Before that, he says, how hard is it for anyone to enter the kingdom? Because we've all got those voices. We've all got things pulling us back, keeping us from really throwing ourselves into the life that Jesus opens to us. But our fear, our brokenness, our sinfulness, our whatever holds us back. We can't do it on our own. But Jesus says, no, of course you can. It's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for you to do this on your own. It's not just the rich who have things holding them back. We all have things we need to let go of. We all have things that hold us back. It's just as difficult for all of us to get into the kingdom as it is for that camel to get through that eye of the needle. The good news is it's not up to us. Yes, it's impossible for you, but with God all things are possible, Jesus tells them. When Jesus calls us, when the Spirit moves us to enter more fully into this life that's been opened to us, we are going to hear those voices. They might just be in our heads, or it might come from other people. I couldn't say this at the 8 o'clock service because my dad was here, but when I was in undergraduate, when I was at URI, and I wanted to do this, so I was like, oh, I can do whatever I want. I'm going to get a degree in philosophy. My dad was like, yeah, but it might not work out. So maybe go and minor in business or something like that. That voice was there. It was real. It was outside of my head. But what about this? But what if it doesn't work out? But what if you're not good enough? But what about? But what about? But what about? I can say, again, because he's not here, I should have listened to him. Minor in business or accounting or any practical field beyond philosophy could have been really helpful. But I'm glad that I didn't listen to those voices because I stuck to this hope, to this dream to do this. But those voices were there. Beyond just my dad at that time trying to make sure I was well provided for. That I could end up like this rich man in our gospel and be comfortable. Beyond that, I had my own voices in my head saying, yeah, but maybe you're not good enough. But maybe you won't get through it. But maybe you won't be able to really do the work. And there was a time in college where this all seemed really distant. But thankfully, though I did listen to those voices and I did fall away a little bit, I didn't abandon this completely. Thankfully, Jesus' voice was louder than those voices. Thankfully, I trusted in his promise that, yeah, it is impossible for me to do all this. Yeah, there's no reason I should be able to stand up here and do all this, but with God, of course there is. I can't do all this on my own, but with the Spirit, with God, I am a lot more capable than I am on my own. If you have those voices saying, but what about? Maybe wait. Maybe let someone else do it. You're not alone. But I think we all hear those voices. One of the reasons we gather here together is to help each other move past those voices, to help each other hear a stronger voice, hear a truer voice, calling us into that deep life, calling us into the work of God's kingdom. Jesus promises us that if we do this work, it will be worth it. He tells us anyone who gives up family, who gives up fields or houses, will receive 100-fold in this life. Again, sorry Heidi, but don't go and talk to her about selling your house. I don't think he's being literal. If you sell your house for Jesus, don't expect 100 more. Despite what televangelists tell you, I don't think that's quite how it works. I think what he's getting at is if we have the courage, if we have the faith, if we can hold on to the hope and move past those little voices that try to speak us out of this, that try to pull us back, to pull us away. If we can get past those and follow Jesus, it is worth it. Did you notice at the end of the list of things we get back 100-fold? He said what we're going to give up: family, houses, fields. Then he said we're going to get all that back 100-fold, but slides in with persecution. Right? He's telling us, trust me guys, do this and it's worth it. But don't expect it to be easy. Don't expect everything to be rainbows and butterflies. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be difficult. Because if you follow me, you're going to be entering a life of love. A life of loving God and loving your neighbor. And that, as we know, is not how the world works. And as we unfortunately know, when you try to change how the world works, it doesn't react kindly. It doesn't take it so well. When you push up against that, it pushes back. And it usually pushes harder than you do. But Jesus promises us that it's worth it. He doesn't lie and hide the fact that it's going to be difficult, but he tells us it's going to be worth it. I'm probably not alone in hearing those voices. Again, I'm not going to speak for you, but I imagine you all hear them too. I just realize how odd that's going to sound on video. The voices telling us not to do this. There aren't other voices up there. We all hear those small voices trying to hold us back, pull us back, to keep us from really walking with Jesus, keep us from really throwing ourselves into doing the work of his kingdom. But know that he promises us that if we see our way through those voices, that if we listen to his voice, to his call, that if we come and follow him like those apostles did, it will be worth it. That if we come and follow him, it's not just ourselves that will be transformed, but the world around us will be transformed as well. We know how broken and painful it is out there, and we have a fix for that. And that fix is listening to his voice over all those other ones. That fix is following him and doing the work that he left for us, the work that he sets before us, of building his kingdom, of living lives that are marked by love, love for God and love for one another. Amen.